anyone here ever heard of the rising craze known as designer babies? Today I'm going to dive into this topic and address the ethical concerns and what we as a community can do to clear up all fear to result in a better future. Now look at these babies. Each one of them is different from the other. But imagine if you were able to not only pick the eye and hair color, but also the intelligence and height. Should this be allowed? Many would say no. But with proper regulations, this program can actually result in the editing of certain diseases. Here's pictures of me growing up. Do you think that my parents wanted to be able to pick and decide how I would behave or look like before I was born? Theoretically, maybe. But if you think about it, if every child looked the same, do you think that they would be able to identify themselves and create a path for themselves? This is why I believe these complex issues can be solved by passing strict regulations and creating a group to oversee them. I will now go into the ethical concerns and explain their importance while also touching on what other countries have already done. According to Sarah Lee, by definition, a designer baby is an embryo that is genetically engineered in vitro for specifically selected traits, ranging from low-risk diseases to gender selection. The idea of designer babies first came up when people wanted to get rid of diseases such as cystic fibrosis or sickle cell anemia, as seen in the research of Clyde Haberman. But as research advanced and technology developed, the idea of controlling qualities like behavior and physical appearance became apparent. But this resulted in fear for the public because it flashed back to the Nazis' quest for blonde, blue-eyed race, as found in the article, The Need to Regulate Designer Babies. As a result of this fear, a negative connotation for anything to do with gene editing was created. Others are concerned with the fact that scientists themselves, without regulations, are the ones who will decide what traits are desirable and undesirable and which should be edited out forever. One of these traits is dwarfism, and people living with this nowadays considers this a false assumption because they are living happy lives and are fully grown. So where should the line be drawn? According to Jack Hansen, if nothing is done to control this issue, a gap in society will be created and so will a loss of individuality. However, I believe these ethical issues can be addressed and resolved without halting any development of science. A few things need to be done, starting with the defining specific rules and regulations of what can and cannot be altered on a fetus. By creating these guidelines, ethical boundaries will not be crossed and will allow for only life-threatening diseases to be altered. Countries like the UK have already set up laws to resolve these issues, and I believe we should follow in their steps by now electing representatives to follow through and create an unbiased group of people and experts who will decide what traits can do what. According to the article Laws and Legislation, the only way this will work is if the government enforces and enacts these laws. Monthly and weekly checks of research should be required, and proper training of gene altering should be available. In order for this to pass, we as a community need to not only donate money for the development of these organizations, but elect representatives into office who will follow through and create what we need for this to happen. In the UK, their program is known as the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority, and they handle the licensing of clinics and the regulating of research, as seen in the article, The Need to Regulate Designer Babies. With constant overview, the US can make leaps into the world of gene editing without any negative views in the public. The article, The Need to Regulate Designer Babies, shows that in the UK, after 2 decades of licensing a set of reproductive technologies, they created the first test tube baby. And this built a better framework for the reliance of the good faith of physicians who have confronted this inherent conflict of interest. This can allow the public to participate in the great advancements discovered and also benefit from them. Based off the research of Philip Ball, these rules allow for the lives of babies to be longer and healthier and provide the opportunities to weed out the genes that lead to certain diseases. Without the creation of this regulatory program, the public will always view designer babies in negative light, as well as things associated with them like in vitro and gene editing. A scientist will continue to decide what traits are desirable and undesirable, and it will widen the gap for those who are already living with these traits, making them feel less than and unwanted. And in the words of Jamie Timon, funding inequalities exacerbates social injustices in our world, not and in our view would not be an ethical approach, and would ultimately lead to the idea of a super race of genetically identical humans, and would eliminate the ability for those to become their own person. So overall, my goal was to provide everyone with the ethical issues of designer babies and the need of laws and regulations in order for this technology to be used for good. And I want to inspire everyone to give thought to this idea and research what designer babies really is in our community, and understand that we have the power to elect and fund the organization that can make a change. In conclusion, I hope everyone does not have a bad view of in vitro gene editing or designer babies when applied only to the ability to save a child's life from pain and illness, because with the correct guidelines, many lives can be saved if the process is utilized for the right reasons.